Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissick and Dana Gentry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. I'm Linda McKissick.
And I'm Dana Gentry.
Hey, Dana, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We are about to get to all celebrate Thanksgiving. So first of all, I want to say I'm very thankful for you.
Oh, me too. I'm super thankful for you. I was doing this call yesterday and she said the girl, she was an agent in California. Anyway, this is going to be a long story short, but she said something and she said, "Are you so grateful to have Linda in your life?" And I said, I can't even I literally can't even describe how grateful I am to have Linda in my life. And she was like, "I'm just so jealous." I was like, "Well, I'm sure she would hop on a call with you."
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of grateful, we are super grateful for Shannon Waller, who is back. We very seldom do this, but Shannon was so good. We have had her, this is our third episode. There's some people that could probably do every episode. Shannon's one of them. So welcome, Shannon.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back. And I'm super thankful. Despite being in Canada, we've already celebrated our Canadian Thanksgiving. I am super appreciative to be back with you guys. I'm very excited.
Awesome.
People loved you, Shannon. We had high demand.
Yes.
And anytime, just let me know.
Yep. And Kate was even saying she immediately thought of her brother-in-law who runs a business that needed the book. So they got the book for him. So I love it. I love it when we can kind of impact people's lives in that way with whatever the message is or the guest or, thank you for taking the time to write these books because, that information changes people's lives. And I know books have changed my life. And so I'm very thankful for that. So why don't you tell us a little bit, Shannon, about this book and how did it come about and kind of what we need to know about it?
Awesome. So by the way, there's nothing better than being useful in my world. So yes, I love that too. And that's kind of why I like these little slim books. They're very practical. Here are the words to use. Here's how to do it. Here's how to think about something. So multiplication by subtraction, which in the subtitle is how to gracefully, very important word, gracefully let go of wrong fit team members. So it came out of a couple things. One is I read a brilliant book, some of you might be familiar, by Dr. Henry Cloud called Necessary Endings.
Oh, that's one of my favorite books.
Isn't it the best?
Yes.
So if you want to understand what this book is about, it's necessary endings applied to entrepreneurial teams. That's what that's really.
That is like a life-changing book it was for me at least, but yes, that's an amazing book.
Yeah. And Dan Sullivan always says, he's co-founder of Strategic Coach. He said, the problem is never the problem. The problem is not knowing how to think about the problem. One of the biggest issues I've found, because I've been coaching entrepreneurs and their teams and team leadership for at least 26 years now. And so to answer your question, what brought about this book, I had one too many circumstances happen where I would go in, work with a leadership team. And there's this one particular example. I probably shouldn't name names. Anyway, entrepreneur's name was John. I'll say that. And then he had someone on his leadership team who was at the initial meetings. I'm coming in to do work with the leadership team to bring them up to speed with unique ability and team success, all the things that we've talked about. And I knew from this other guy, initials TL, I'm just calling that he was just nodding and paying lip service, didn't mean a word. And I was like, John, there's something's off here. This guy's not actually on your team. He's here for different reasons. And then 2 years later, he calls me up and says, Shannon, that conversation you had with me 2 years ago about TL? You were right. And I was like, darn it. So I can just tell sometimes so is the values misfit between a high performer in this case and the entrepreneur. And what was happening in that case is this particular person was kingdom building. So they're building up their own little kingdom within the company, and he was there for his reasons, not the reasons for the company. So that irritates me, or as Dan would say, it bothers me. So I decided to do something about it. And of course, we've all had sometimes lovely people who work for our companies that were not a right fit. They may have helped us get to a certain stage of our growth, but they weren't going to help make it to the summit. If entrepreneurial companies ever actually even have a summit, we just keep going up the stages, right? So how do you handle that? How do you think about it? So I was kind of instigated by a frustrating situation, but then I also realized I wanted to help. Really wanted to help people have a framework to know how to put someone in the right seat. I wanted, what are the success criteria? I've got a really fun scorecard. So I have to thank my colleague, Christine, who said, it would be really great if you had a scorecard in this book. And I was like, no, yes, no. Finally ended up with a yes. And so there's right fit team member mindset and behavior scorecard for entrepreneurial companies, which I probably could do a lot more with now that I think about it, because it's too easy to hire people with just the right cognitive capability. Either don't have the passion or don't have the right instincts for their role. So that's part of what I bring in is this, it's called the 3 parts of the mind. I learned about it from Colby, but it's really just documenting all of the different ways that you can, a human being can show up. It doesn't include physical or spiritual, but other than that, it covers all the main things that we work with people. And so what's the cognitive? So brain power, they have the learning, the training, the skills. Then the affective, do they have the heart, the passion? Do they care about the same things you care about? Do they want to work for a for-profit company? Do they care about real estate? All of those things. And then there's finally, how does someone strive and take action? And that's the Colby profile we talked about in our unique ability podcast and our podcast about unique ability. So, when you understand, it's like, oh, this person over here is not doing well, but if I move them, oh my gosh, they become a rock star. Win. So it's not that the immediate solution is to move someone out. It's actually to be able to analyze the symptoms, what's going on, decide whether or not it's a cognitive issue, learning. So maybe there's some training available if the person has the bandwidth. Is it that they don't care? That's a much harder problem to solve, by the way, or a misfit of values, or whether or not the role that someone's in is simply a misfit for their instincts and you can move them and be successful. So a lot of it's about just looking at someone and placing them correctly, seeing if that works before you think you have to move them out. But if you do have to move them out, how to do it? Because that's what people dread.
Shannon, what was that first one? Sorry, you said something and then you said, or they just don't care, or they're just a misfit in the wrong role. What was
the first one is really the cognitive. Do they have the thinking power? Do they have the bandwidth? Or do they simply not, they have the bandwidth, but they don't have the learning? Okay. So there's some training or coaching that you need to do to get them up to speed with what you need. So if you think about the cognitive, affective, cognitive, which is kind of the way that I look at it, then you can go, oh, check, that doesn't work. Can I slide them over? The one thing you can't change, though, that I've learned is people's values. So if you've attracted if the person has joined your company, you probably didn't attract them, who does not have an alignment of values, kind of a deal breaker. I don't know how to change someone else's values. I only know how to work with people whose values are resonant with mine.
So real quick, one, I want to think about the gentleman. It took him 2 years to figure out what you had figured out in that meeting. I can't even imagine what that cost was to him and to the company. That would be my first statement. And then my second question is, of those, which is the one that's hardest to catch in an upfront interview?
That same one, actually. You can kind of figure out often through testing or on the job. If you need someone to be a good writer, have them write something. If you need them to be a great coder, have them write some code. If you need them to do a sales call, have them do a sales call. So we can test that proficiency without too much difficulty. Colby, best profile on the planet, if not the only one, to be able to trust how someone's mental energy plays out. But people, and so this was the situation with this gentleman, and the cost is a huge part of actually what I outline in the book, because if you're not aware of the cost, you don't take action, right? And guess what? As the owner or leader, we are the last to know. Everyone else is like, oh my gosh, what took you so long? And you're like, what? I just figured this out 2 weeks ago, right? So this is the other thing. So so this gentleman, very smart, high performer with the wrong value system. Right. So I have a scale on 1 to 5 of level of difficulty. So a level of difficulty, number 1, you've just hired someone, you're in the probation period. It looked like it was going to work in the interviews. It didn't, goodbye. Not the end of the world. Level 5, is a legacy employee who's been around for a long, long time, but whose capabilities haven't kept up or aren't growing. Family businesses run into this a lot. And then that's actually might be level 6. Level 5 is high performer, where there's a whole bunch of stuff you're going to have to pick up if this person leaves. And you're like, oh my gosh, I just don't want to do those things anymore. But they're causing harm. Right? So the wrong value system, that's a level 5 out of 5.
Like they're causing like a cultural harm.
Yeah, they're subdividing people. You have a company all of a sudden that has politics. You're like, how did that happen? They're different departments or areas are feuding with one another. They're saying one thing to one person, another thing to you.
Yeah.
And it's the hardest to go back to your question, Linda. It's a great question. Is which one is the hardest one to figure out? Because I've interviewed people and they're great interviewers. Like they're just great. They're kind of professional job getters, if there's such a thing. But then you work with them for a while and you're like, something feels off, but you don't know what it is. And it can be subtle because again, they're presenting their best face to you. But they may not be being honest with themselves, with other team members. The list goes on.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I love the Colby also. Where have you seen the Colby well, maybe not the Colby to be wrong, but for someone to interpret the Colby wrong? Because here's what we have a tendency to do. We've had assessments forever in our company. It started years ago with the IRA, and then it was the caliper, and then it was the AVA, and then now it's the KPA. No, is that right? Yeah. Okay. That's right.
Yeah.
And what I've found is sometimes people will put, we say the KPA is about 25%. It's not 100%, but people will automatically assume that it's 100%. And they won't, validate it, because in our assessments, we have to validate that they're actually correct.
Right.
Because the person could disagree or say, yeah, I used to be that way, but to be honest with you, I learned the hard way and now I don't do that. Right. So what have you found on the Colby people make mistakes with when they're using it? Because I love the Colby. I ask everybody, what's your Colby?
Oh, I know. Someone starts dating in our company. It's Colby, you know what I mean? If my daughter starts dating someone, I'm like, what's her Colby? Right. So it's kind of fun. It's interesting. I love Colby. And one of the important things to know if you're into psychometric profiles, as we are, is there are two things that are super important. One is reliability, right? First of all, does it measure what it's supposed to? That's number one. Number two is it valid so valid and reliable. Does it measure what it's supposed to? And is it reliable over time? Right. And there are, the Disney princess one, not particularly valid, not particularly reliable over time. So that has a score that will be outside where you want. So Colby has done a number of outside studies have been done with Colby in terms of what's called a retest reliability. And if you're into stats, which I had to be for a short period of my university career, the number of people who change what's called zones was accurate to plus or minus 1. The number of people who change the zone from being, for example, insistent versus or responsive versus, resistant, that kind of thing is not statistically significant. And that is a very important psychological term. So it's the number of people who change zones, which means they change how they operate, not statistically significant. Not 3 times fast. So it is incredibly reliable and it's very valid. So when Kathy Colby was creating the algorithm, anything that they tested it against cognitive profiles, they tested it against personality profiles. If there was any correlation whatsoever, those questions went away. So it only measures how you strive. You could be a smart initiating fact finder or a not so smart one. You'll still be initiating fact finder. One person's going to go get great information. The other person, not so much. Same thing with quick starts. You're going to, smart quick starts going to come up with really great ideas. Not so smart quick starts, not so much. So it's very, it's completely accurate to what it is. You can be introverted, extroverted, doesn't matter. Colby's just a very clean measure of what it does. Where I see much more debate and people not buying into their profile is in the affective. So personality, preferences, and frankly, we can change over time, right? I'm certified in DISC, so I'm very, very familiar with that. It's not unlike a couple of the other profiles out there. And we can shift a little bit, you know. Even someone in pain will have a different personality than someone not in pain, you know, or previous selves not in pain. So those ones I find to be more movable. I'm not saying they're not valid. They are measuring the person's preference, but in terms of reliability, it does not tend to be as strong. But there are much better ones and much worse ones. So I do not want to paint everyone with the same brush. You know, there's a lot of profiles that have been around for a number of years and they're superb. And I use them a lot. And I found if I don't use them, I'm missing out on some important information. So I'm a huge fan of all kinds.
We had several people ask us last time, do you have to be a part of Strategic Coach to take the Colby assessment? You can go online, right? And just take it.
No, there's actually no official affiliation between Coach and Colby. We just love their tool and we use it all the time. No, anyone, I mean, I just put through my friends' kids, you know, my kids' friends, I should say that right, you know, through the Colby. You know, she's 26, right? So just go to Colby.com, so KOLBE.com. Now, if anyone's doing it for your team, please call Colby and set up your business account, because then you can buy credits. And that if someone just goes online and just does the kind of general population one, they get their profile, but then they have to share it with you. If you set up your free business account and you buy credits, then they get the information, but so do you. So you get to keep this repertoire of who have you done the profiles on. And again, it's not a test. You can't fail. All the results are good, just whether or not they're good for that role. So setting up your Colby business account, or what's called a wherewithal account, a much better strategy for a business. But they can
still pay for it, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
If you want your mother to do it, go to Colby.com.
Yeah.
Unless she works for you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, and we're not here to talk all about Colby, so I don't want to totally side rail, but I always struggled with knowing the difference between follow through and implement. Like, isn't that kind of the same thing? Or how would you say that's different?
I totally understand. It's probably the number one confusion. And I think Kathy would probably choose a different word other than implementer, because it does get confusing, because we use the term implement like implement projects.
Yeah.
Actually follow through. Here's how I want you to think about implementer: using tools. Okay. So for example, I think I waved this around last time.
Okay.
So an implementer is someone who actually, there's a term called haptic, which is learning through touch. A lot of machine learning, like computers and robots do this. And so they learn through touch. And so the shorter someone is on the Colby implementer, the more abstract they're able to envision things. And the longer the implementer, the more hands-on, tangible that they need to be. And for those of us in the middle, we really love, pardon my noise, using props. So my unique ability of teamwork, pass the baton. We like to bring the tangible into the conversation. I'm picky about the quality of pens I use. I'm picky about the paper. Technology doesn't break when I walk by, you know, that kind of thing. I have a toolkit. I love my toolkit. Picked up my chainsaw habit last summer, you know, all of those things. It's that ability it's really how you handle space and tangibles, not necessarily how you follow through, if that makes sense.
Okay, that makes sense.
Does that help, Dana?
Yes, thank you. That helps a lot. I'm actually surprised I'm not a little bit higher on that then, but that I just always thought that those were the same. So that helps a ton.
Well, I envision it like this, and see if I'm wrong, Shannon. If you're higher on that last one, which is the implementer, you're more of a hands, like a tradesman, like you work with your hands, right? Or no?
Well, that might be something that you do. And there's a difference between someone who's a builder and someone who repairs.
Yeah.
So if you're a hand craftsman, I really hope you have implementer, or you're going to run out of energy for doing that. But I've also seen amazing crafters, people who are great chefs, and they're actually good at the knife work, not just the finding the recipe.
Okay. Now I see why I'm low. Never say no more.
So don't play with that knives, Dana, is the coaching for you in this one, right? And it's interesting in real estate, because I actually do find people, particularly people who like going out into the field, who like doing the tours. They're the ones who pick up on the physical quality of the home. There's probably a little bit of that tangible drive there. And you're selling a tangible product. There's
Mhm.
something very satisfying about that,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Think about it from that end. So I would not be surprised if your audience, people listening, is like, oh, I actually do relate a little bit to that. Now, will you ever become a tradesperson? Probably not. But you're also not allergic to physical things. That's good.
Yeah.
Interesting. So on the multiplication by subtraction book, why do you think it's so hard for people? I mean, I think I might have said this in our last interview, but even in the 90-day period that we've already told somebody, and I will like tell them 10 times. Now, remember, it's a 90-day trial, I feel so responsible for someone that it's like, oh, if I've already put them through this and I've now uprooted them from their last job and now they have this one. And if I get rid of them, they won't have this job. I have such a high sense of responsibility that I think I find myself starting to look for, okay, well, maybe I should train them better, or, ignoring the signals, if you will.
Yeah. Well, you just nailed the number one reason why people don't take action.
Okay.
And that's because we think it's our fault.
Mm.
The truth is, if the thought has bubbled up from your unconscious to conscious, you probably that's kind of a clue. Let me put it that way. But I actually have a list because I did a ton of my version of research, which means talking to my workshop groups. So I have a whole list on page 25 of why we don't do it. Why don't we deal with wrong fit team members? Is actually the chapter 3. We dread confrontation. Tears, because people cry sometimes. We really don't like tears. We think it's our fault. Loyalty. People have been with us for a long time. We don't see the issue clearly, so it's tough to deal with something when you don't know it. We're afraid of legal ramifications, especially if you don't have a good who for that in language. We think we need the warm body, right? Like, I don't care how bad they are. They're better than nobody.
That's so true.
We fear the work will come back to us and we're swamped. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Take your free days. We think team morale will take a hit. This is a big fear. It's almost never the reality. The team's kind of waiting for you to clue in, just so you know. We can't pinpoint the problem. Another really frustrating thing for owners. Hiring is hard and challenging, especially right now. And they still get great results.
Man, those are all so true. Linda, think about OPs with team leaders on they don't want to take the job back and they want they need a body in there.
Yeah. So true. I can kind of see myself in some of all of those. I've progressed to not, I've gotten away from not really unwilling to do the challenging things, but I've moved more towards the other end of I don't want that job back and I don't want to have to go through this long, lengthy process again.
Yeah. And those are all valid reasons, but then you have to realize the cost. And this is what I also spent a lot of time in conversation with leaders. What's the cost of keeping someone? And you raised that earlier. So let me just share some of these because they might be helpful. There's the dollar cost, right? So it's expensive to keep someone on the team who shouldn't be there, especially long-term. Coaches get some people on board for 3 years past their expiration date.
Oof.
I don't want to tell you the number of figures it cost. Okay. Toxic to the team and company culture, creates friction and drag, causes you to lose good people. And I think this is an important culture thing. Your high performers want to work with other high performers. All-stars want to be in an all-star team. They don't want to be working with people who say one thing, do another, are avoiding the work, all the things.
So true.
If you're not holding a high standard, your team, your best people will leave because it's not an area, and it's not a team that they want to play on. Occupies your energy and time. And this is a big clue, actually. If you're spending a lot of time discussing this one person, if there's any drama, major clue. And then time consuming for management negatively impacts the team member themselves because if they've quit and stayed, that's actually not healthy for them. It's damaging to your company's reputation. I've got a wicked story in the book about that. And it's actually demoralizing to the team. So when you realize those, you're like, oh, maybe I really should do something. Right.
Yeah. I've had one where I would start my conversations and say, I know y'all are tired of hearing about this because I'm tired of telling you about it. But just listen to this one more story.
And people are like, why aren't you doing something about it? Right? And you're like, Linda, you're a go-getter. What's going on? So there's a little chart. And
you really did do that.
I know you were the one I did it to.
It is like, enough already.
Oh my gosh.
So on page 34 and 35, I have a chart so that you can pinpoint the problem. And I have to say, if there's more than like 3 out of this page of 12, massive clue here.
Mm-hmm.
So like oppositional, drama queen or king, they're focused on status, they're not accountable, uncooperative, clueless. That's a big one. Arrogance, aka God's gift to your company. Not adaptable is another one. And if you read this list and names come to mind, yeah, might want to see that. But I've had someone actually put this. So this one team member had some things she was phenomenal at, and some things not so much. And he put this book on her desk, and she was like, "Is there something I should know?" He said, "I just want you to read it.
See if you see yourself in there somewhere."
She shaped up immediately. Like some
Oh.
people are just kind of clueless as to their behavior and the cost. So
Yeah.
That's very true.
if they're aware and they want to be there, coaching is possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sorry, you do not want to see yourself in these pages. It is not flattering.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So anyway, it's kind of fun. But if you do need to move someone out, not just around in your company, when I had one client tell me, he said, if I knew that it actually only took 15 minutes, I would have done this almost a year ago. Now, you have your ducks lined up in a row, talk to your legal. In Canada, we really have to be careful about that. US is a little different. But it really is about a 15-minute conversation.
Yeah.
It's short-term pain versus long-term. And you kind of start off with, unfortunately, today's your last day. You go from there. So all like the language is in here, what to say after you've made all the other adjustments and it still isn't working. Then, there's a very clear plan and path for how to actually take action and do it, which kind of demystifies it and helps you make that very necessary ending, unfortunately.
Yeah. I love
people don't fire themselves.
No.
Mm-mm.
That's the problem.
And they could be completely miserable and still not check themselves out of it. Well, yeah.
Yeah. We experienced that with someone and it was awful. The toxicity was insane. And we almost lost 2 really, really good people who fortunately are still there. And I actually thought 3 people had to go. I've had to learn this. This did not come factory installed. And thank goodness we didn't. One of them is one of my very, very, very best performers.
Wow.
But the influence of that other person was taking this other one down.
Yeah.
Do you try to keep people? I always feel like I'm way understaffed because I get jobs back and I don't want jobs back. So do you keep a layer of people that if you did figure out someone was a need to go kind of person, then somebody else would take over that role? I know Dan doesn't get the role back. So how do y'all handle that? Do other people just step in until you get that person replaced? Or how do you keep from getting those jobs back?
That's a great point. Well, yes. First of all, have good. So who, not how, strategic coach concept in the cool book. Have some who's available. Like if you're chronically understaffed, that's a whole other issue. And you could be losing good people just because you're exhausted.
Yeah.
That's one issue. But it's interesting. And there's a great example of one of our team members. I think I tell the story in the book too, is that this person would not adapt. This is the not adapting and came and complained. It was like implementing Salesforce or something, right? Like something that's pretty important company-wide. And eventually kind of a mutual decision to have this person leave. And then the team who had to pick up, so it was a team of 4, well, actually a team of 5, and then it went down to 4. So that's a fair bit of work to pick up. One of the people on the team said, thank goodness. This is actually where the idea of multiplication by subtraction, the lift that team felt by the oppression that this other person had brought into energy and enthusiasm and positivity and just teamwork and all the things that coach stands for was amazing. They were happy to take on the work amongst a relatively small team because that other person was gone. And we had no idea of those other things. We just thought it was this one particular problem, but it actually turned out to be indicative of a lot of lack of cooperation and collaboration on a bunch of different levels.
Isn't it so funny? I mean, I've had this happen more times now than I would like, but no one even says anything. And then when you finally make the like, you get the courage to let them go, and then the rest of the team's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, we're so much better, we all like each other now. And I'm like, why the heck did you all not say anything before? But it's interesting how that happens, for sure. And I think I love those 3 things that you gave, Shannon, because I have felt like, at least in the last year, and maybe some of this is like pandemic, I do think people are worn out, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But I have had people, I've realized through really using unique ability, that some of the people, they did not care, and they do have the bandwidth, they were just in the wrong seat. And by switching them, it's like a light bulb went off. And I'm so happy that we had these tools and that we were able to figure that out. Otherwise, I feel like I could have lost some good talent
100%,
because I didn't think that they were the right fit. And I still have, a little ways to go with that. But I just felt like that misfit of the role is a really important one.
And that's the bulk of the book, right?
Yeah.
Having the right mindset, having the right tools, really thinking about what does the role require. Like, don't put someone who's a crazy introvert on reception.
Yeah.
Probably not a good idea, don't put, or the opposite is also true. Don't someone in, backstage in accounting where they never talk to anybody. So, once I really consider all the profiles just simply useful shortcuts. Human beings are multidimensional, complex creatures, but if you can get some commonality and gives you the shortcut to how this person could be made the best use of, and I mean that in the highest possible way, not used, but useful, and I want to be useful in any organization I'm in or in any conversation. So use me that way, to be misapplied. That's not good for a human, much less any other kind of instrument, right? So when we can have the right tools, and again, I never feel like I ever want to box anyone in, but when you have the tools, then you can go, oh my gosh, no wonder this wasn't a win for you. I will tell you, I'm picky. I've got high standards. When someone's not successful, I point it out. I might seem really nice, but sometimes not. I'm like, boom, 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 this is not working, and I don't like it. And I'm not quiet about it usually. Do I think this person is valuable? Of course. Do I think they're a great person? Yes. Not in this role.
Yeah.
So getting clarity about that and confidence and having the tools to be able to make it work, Dana. So that's really the bulk of the work. And then only then, if you can't make it work, then is it time to gracefully, not harshly, exit them and free them up to the marketplace so they can be happier. They can find where they can make a bigger, better contribution. It just may not be with you.
So I have a question. I'm just hiring a new EA, and as far as the activities, they all seem like activities, and she seems like a right fit. But I'm what am I, a 9 quick start?
You're a 9.
Yeah. And she's like a 2. Is this, can we still make this work?
Well, I just hired someone I'm a 9, and I just hired a 3.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. Linda, there's hope.
Yeah.
Other numbers do matter. So if you don't know what Colby is, this is going to be a little bit mysterious to you. You really, really, really do, Linda, want to do a Colby right fit. Okay. It doesn't hurt to have someone who's accommodating in quick start. What I would say is please don't do the same thing at the same time together in the same room.
What's a Colby right fit? What'd you say?
Oh, Colby right fit is their hiring process.
Yeah.
It will save you so much pain and so much money. Yeah. So there you do a Colby on the job. It's 24 questions, super fast. Then you do the Colby on the person and you match it. And they give you a range of success, and they score the candidate A, B, C, D, or F. And they say don't hire below a B-. I say don't hire below a B. And it works brilliantly.
Okay. I think I did that, but I haven't bothered to look at it and see what it is. I need to go do that.
It won't take you long.
Okay. I think I might need to change the job description that I put in there, though. because I think I remember from the last conversation we had with you, I think I was mingling 2 people in with one.
That happens.
So I think I need to go back and change that job description so that I get a more accurate, right fit score.
But if you do have someone who is a very opposite way of striving than you do, even if you just know this, even if you haven't done the Colby, don't have the advantage of the Colby profile, is that you can both, if they do what they do really, really well, you do what you do really, really well, and then you have these connection points. Just don't try and have each of you do what you're best at the same time in the same room. I tried that. It was a disaster. And we love each other and we're both smart. So that wasn't the problem. We just, did things so differently. As long as you can trade and do the handoffs, you can be okay. And my last person and I proved this. Our Colbys were radically different. She was an 8742. I'm a 3295. So if we made that work for 8.5 years before she transitioned to her new career in yoga, it can be done.
Yeah,
So,
I think she's an 8823 or something. So it's real close. So, Shannon, as we wrap up here, what would be some advice or Dana, did you have another question?
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
So I'm Shannon, like going through all, I'm writing so many things down.
So Shannon, what would be the last bit of advice you would leave people? One, I would say read the book, and grab the book, because it sounds like there's so many tools in there that you could just almost, when you start to have those doubts, look at that part in the book and kind of do as a little checklist. Okay. Yeah. I've confirmed that what I'm feeling is right.
Yeah. There's a lot of clues there. First of all, be the best manager leader you can be, which means letting people know how they can be successful for you. Also, please be upfront. You've learned this from Dan, Linda. Let people know what drives you crazy. Yeah. Because we do tend to fire people for reasons they don't know, because they've driven us crazy and we didn't bother to tell them how not to do that. Right. So that would be step one. Number two is, though, if you've been working with someone and there's little clues, there's little hints, do not ignore them. Same as any relationship. If there are some red flags, pay bloody attention to them, because you're not wrong. And because we're in a leadership role, you will be the last to know quite often. Yeah. So, because to your point earlier, Dana, people don't like telling on other people. They feel like you should know, even though frankly, half the time there's no way for us to do that. So pay attention to the clues, coach people often, don't wait for a year to give them a performance review, all of these things, so that, and do the profiles. Sorry, that's more than one thing. But trust your instincts, because by the time it's reached the level of consciousness, there's probably something there. If there's one thing, kind of to your point, trust yourself to at least to dig deeper. You may not let them go the next day, but you don't want to leave those problems to fester, because it does not end well for you, your team, or your clients. And that's super important to pay attention to. Awesome.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Shannon, we could talk to you all day. I'm sure we'll just have a million other excuses to bring you back on. Mainly because Dana and I need so much help in this area.
I love that. Well, if anyone wants more info, yourteamsuccess.com, my Team Success podcast. We have a whole series on multiplication by subtraction. And I really am what's so important to me is that people are happy working together and they're effective and they're producing great results. But this is one of the things you have to know, is how to gracefully let go of wrong fit people. Well, first of all, how to place people correctly, and then how to let go of wrong fit people, so that you can have that dream team that you're after.
Awesome. So much more fun when you have, I mean, gosh.
Yeah, it really is.
When I think about what I put up with, I'm like, ooh, yeah.
Yeah, so
thank
true.
Thank you for having me. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Shannon.
Shannon, we appreciate it. Remember, if you have not done it already, be sure and hit subscribe below. And the greatest compliment you can give Dana and I is a 5-star review down below, and pass this podcast along to anyone who you think could benefit from these amazing conversations. And of course, these wonderful guests like Shannon. And if you have a question, comment, or a challenge or opportunity that you would like to discuss with Dana and I on the podcast, reach out to us at info@everything life and real estate. Dana, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And Shannon, thank you. And I'll see you at Strategic Coach.
Okay. Sounds good. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.